I'm Loydeen.
And I'm Heidi.
And we are the U-Haulers. Hi, folks. So, things have been happening. We just had an election. Not so exciting. But we wanted to come on and chat with our community about it. So, we know a lot of people are scared. We've heard from a lot of people some grief, frustration, all of the things. And we went to church. We've talked to you about our church before. Went to our church yesterday. And it was just nice because we got to just have an honest conversation at church about it. And there were people there that had worked the Kamala the Harris campaign. And there was some hope. They were talking about how, am I saying it right, 107 days? Right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
How in 107 days they pulled off pretty much the impossible. I mean, they got over 200,
electoral votes.
college electoral votes. They, had 48 million views. They had so many people involved. And of course, we have a lot of work to do. But the fact that we had, a black female president elect that was running, who also became our vice president, some big stuff happened. And, it went against not only not a lot of time, but also a lot of boycotting of the election was happening with other things happening in our world, and a lot of not voters showing up because of that. And so I think we are moving the needle. There is some hope, and I think we just have a lot more work to do, but it gave me hope. And so I kind of wanted to put that out there because I know there's a lot of people in despair and not feeling hope right now. So I just thought it was, it was nice to be around, people that could just be honest and talk about the conversation and talk about, their fears. And, because I have friends in states like Michigan that they were so shocked, when it went red, and are worried about, they just got married and they're worried about letting people know they're gay or keeping their Facebook up, or do they need to move? Just worried about the things coming up in the courts. And we are fortunate because we're in California that's having the opposite response. They're shoring up laws, and we passed the marriage equality law. Is that the right way to say it? To put, words in there to protect us, and just kind of shoring up laws if they come through to make sure that California is protected. And so Heidi and I had talked about moving out of California at some point, and now California is kind of our safe haven right now. So
yeah.
So we know a lot of people don't have that. There were 3 states that passed marriage protection laws, right?
I can't remember how many.
I think it was 3.
It was more than one.
Yeah, I believe it was 3. And so, anyways, we kind of just wanted to have a conversation about it. Heidi and I haven't talked a lot about it because she kind of, I'll let you talk about what you want to say.
Well, I think that, I have been more outspoken, in the past. My job, right, and what I do and what I study and watching the courts and things like that have, I've been worried for a long time, I guess, right? I haven't felt much hope for a really long time, actually. So since 2016, I would say, as a minimum. But I haven't said much about it because I don't, I've been talking about it with people that I love and trying to articulate my position gently and with, compassion and with respect for 8 years. And I just feel like it hasn't mattered. So, it feels a bit like I'm just complaining to a very unhearing mass. So I guess I've just kind of gone inside. I too took a lot of hope and some like, I guess, call to action, that there's just a lot of work to still be done. And I'm very grateful that we live here, and that I don't have to be afraid, that I will lose my licenses, or that we will lose the rights that we've, fought for. That when I got married the first time, we stood in those lines when they overturned it, right? We got married, and a couple months later we were back at the ballot, and they were like, oh, no, just kidding. You don't get to be married now. And so, I mean, I'm not going to lie and say that these kinds of setbacks don't hurt every time they happen, because they do. And, I think it's less, I think for me it's less hope and more like fuel, right? It just feels like it's a bonfire for sure, but I don't know that I would say that it's joyous. I feel like I am now having to stoke this fire because we're not there yet, right? And there was someone at church that said something that was really stark for me, and that was, sometimes when the thing that you've been asking for and hoping for and wanting happens, you just sort of are like, oh, great, and you take a deep breath. And it isn't that we don't deserve to take a deep breath, and it isn't that we don't, we shouldn't have the right to feel at home and at peace in our country. But maybe because we don't, we won't, watch TV every night and be anesthetized to the struggle and pain that's still out there. So, the truth is, right, like, a lot of marginalized groups have been fighting and fearing, and in way scarier situations, I think, for way longer than the LGBTQ, perhaps. And I think it's, I don't really know. I think maybe the fire that I am stoking, feels so necessary that I'm tired. Like, I would like to not stoke it. And I just think that, I think that, it's such deeply personal pain, as along with, like, this very sort of heavy, expansive political pain, and just wondering, like, what am I missing? What don't I understand? What is the disconnect? Because, I feel like I've tried to open my mind and my discourse to include and involve voices that I wouldn't have previously. I've tried to see things from other perspectives. I've asked people that I trust and respect who see things from the opposite perspective to try to understand, what pieces of this make sense to them, and how this all, kind of fits with faith, and, all those things. And and I just think that, I don't know that I'll understand it. And it's really hard to have compassion and empathy for something that you don't understand. And, I feel like trying to understand it just sort of leaves me in tatters. When we were talking and, you said, why does it always feel like we're the unruly teenagers that have to sort of keep our mouths shut, right? Like, at, we're coming up on holiday tables, right? And we are intentionally putting ourselves and our kids at tables where we're allowed, but not our viewpoints and not our politics and not our belief systems or structures. And so while we do our best to be peacekeepers in those rooms and not destroy relationships and try to understand nuances, it's a very hollow feeling, because I leave those tables often feeling like I'm not heard or seen or understood. And so, I think one of the reasons why I have not spoken at length about how I'm feeling or how I'm doing or what I want to do to try to continue to move the needle is because it's so deeply personal now. The work that has to be done is so deeply personal, and the empathy and vulnerability and continued, striving feels like it's so fraught and lonely. But it's like inescapable, right? Like we could move to Portugal and I'd still feel like these holiday tables are the most lonely places I could ever sit, or we could not go and set our own lonely table. And so it's so inescapable and so all consuming.
I decided to post about the election. Not everything I felt. I just shared some stories on Instagram of, some facts that had come out about, because there was the whole thing about how Trump said, no, I'm not gonna, help out the rich, and the middle class aren't going to be, be the ones taxed and this and that. And then, of course, then when his budget plan came out, it very starkly showed that, if you, I'm going to get the number wrong, but in the 900,000s and more, you will have the biggest tax break. And then if you make 365,000 and above, then you'll have another tax break. And then anyone below those numbers will have to pay more taxes. So again, the rich are going to get tax breaks. The ones that can afford to pay taxes, where it wouldn't even dent them to pay more taxes, not only are they not going to pay more or pay what they were paying, but they're going to now pay much less. And then the ones that are struggling and can't afford, they're going to be the ones paying more taxes. So in his whole let's shore up the country and help, it's going to be on the backs of the people that are not rich and can't afford it. And so I was showing that, and I had shared or reposted Sophia Bush's, she had put out a thing because she was upset about how he calls himself a comedian, but he's not funny, had basically said, well, the election's over, so now we can stop, lying and saying that we're not coming for you with Project 2025. Now we can say that actually the plan is Project 2025. And everything he does is crass and mean. He has a new film coming out called Am I a Racist, which is just disgusting. And anyways, so I was reposting about that and some hope things. And anyway, so I shared it on Instagram and it reposts to Facebook, which I know it does. And so I knew that my family would see it, but it was just kind of like a repost, and we're usually pretty good about, we just, they could see my post or not. And if they do, on a story, then we just have different viewpoints and we kind of leave it at that. And they're very, in different ways, supportive of our family, changing holidays, traveling with us, having us over, being, family to our kids and loving on us. Some family members, a brother and sister standing in for my mom and dad who have passed and walking me down the aisle and being the mother of the bride and, showing up to my wedding. Some not showing up to my wedding. So there's just different areas that they have kind of supported us. And I'm having to remind myself of those things because those things mean a lot and not everyone gets those. And, you know, Heidi's parents have been, you know, very supportive of us and loving for us, and that, you know, she hasn't always had family support. And like we've talked about before, she's lost someone, you know, her hero and her best friend and brother for, you know, decades because of it. And so to see the things that have changed, like I'm hanging kind of on to that hope, because when I did post these things, I did have a family member decide that he wanted to, you know, write me on Facebook Messenger and kind of come at me to let me know that I have the right to be wrong. And just say some not so great things. And I, for the most part, ignored it. I did write back. You know, at one point, I think I wrote back because I usually am the one that never says anything. Like, I came out to my family and then just kind of let everyone feel their feels and us all handle it and give them their space and time to come and show me love in the ways that they felt comfortable, and just kind of keep growing that. And I'm very grateful on how much they do, you know, love on my family, love on my kids, love on my wife. There wasn't kicking out. They do invite to holidays. They do call us family. They do, you know, when they talk to our kids, they'll say, you know, your moms are teaching you this, and they do support our parenting. And so there's a lot of wins in my book that not a lot of people got, and I didn't know that I would get, and that we've kind of grown and gotten more and more over the years. And so I usually keep my mouth shut. Like, and I feel like a lot of people in our community, when we talk, they're the ones that keep their mouth shut. Like at the holiday tables, you know, if they come to our house, we don't talk about our viewpoints. So we go to their house, we don't talk about our viewpoints. And for the most part, they don't talk about theirs either, but it does always kind of come out, and in different ways that are painful, that I just kind of suck down. I just swallow. And so I think at this moment I was like, I'm not going to just swallow. I'm just going to grab a Kleenex. I'm tearing up. So I wrote back basically because I was told you have the right to be wrong and some other things. And so I said, well, you also have the right to vote for a rapist. And there was no like arguing that he was a rapist. It's not like they wrote back and said he's not a rapist, you know, because I said you have the right to vote for a rapist of multiple women, even though you have a daughter and you have sisters and you have nieces. And also someone who is coming for my family and supports a group that their entire plan is to tear down my family and come after my marriage, and a marriage and family that you have stood up to support, you know. And I just left it at that. Of course, they did not leave it at that and just kept coming and coming, you know, and saying some really awful things that should not have been said. But I just, you know, swallowed it. And so it's been one of those kind of things, because like the holidays are coming up, I'm staying with this person, and it just has to be, again, where it just has to not be talked about. And I think that's what makes it hard, because it's like I find that people will love you, will love us, will love my kids, and yet because when they're voting, the things that are scary for us don't affect them. Obviously, in the big sense, it will, because they have family that is going to be affected, but it's not coming after their marriage. It's not coming after, you know. So, and I have a lot of one-issue voters in my family, which I've never understood. I understand that they feel very passionate about the subject. I've just never understood, you know. I think what I'm used to having, I mean, I grew up Republican, and so I'm used to having people that I love being on the other side, and that's not really what's hard for me. It's not really if someone votes Republican and I vote Democrat or that we disagree. It's specifically Trump for me because I feel like it's so polarizing and it's so personal and it's so attacking in such awful ways, and it's putting up someone who, I mean, it's not only a criminal, but what he does to women. I mean, rapes women and sexually harasses, and they've all heard the stuff he said. You know, they all know the pussy comment. Like, it's nothing that's hidden. And someone said to me recently, they said, well, you know, Trump's just not a role model. You know, just don't use him as a role model. But, you know, he'll be great for this country. And I'm like, I don't think when someone's a rapist, when he rapes women, that's not a word you use that's, oh, well, he's not a role model. That's someone that belongs in prison. And you definitely should not have him running the country. And so I just get so frustrated about that kind of stuff. And so it's just been one of those situations where it's like, oh, is it too polarizing? Is it too close to the election to have holidays? Is it too close to home? Will I be able to just swallow it when I need to if it comes up? And I think that's why I was like, should we go this year? You know, because I was like, it's harder than usual, than just like, it's not just like a temper tantrum like, oh, my side lost and I'm, you know.
Well, I think that that's part of it, right? Is that we're not throwing a temper tantrum. There will be no January 6th with riots and an attempted coup because we're the grown-ups. And yet in all of these, you know, situations, like our viewpoint has to be swallowed because the other grown-ups at the table, you know, the ones that we think of as grown-ups, right? They just get angry. Like it's not even a conversation where I could say like, I just genuinely don't understand, and have someone enter into a gentle discourse with me. He is just this fulcrum upon which we have broken. And I don't think that, you know, I mean, I think that there are...
He being Trump.
What? He being Trump, yeah. And I just think that, you know, there's so much to be afraid of. And so much work to do. And I feel like trying to get my bearings. Like, what is true to myself? What's true to my marriage? What's true to my family? And yet allows for me to have a larger community. And how do I maintain my boundaries and my integrity and not, you know, have all of these personal relationships devolve, you know? And I think that, like, again, we're not going to see January 6th this January. We're just not. We're not going to have an uproar or an armed fucking insurrection. So, you know, so then we just sit quietly and hurt, you know, and the temper tantrum that was thrown, you know, on January 6th, you know, that was also just sort of howling in pain and rage. And so I guess I'm seeking, like, how can I howl? What attention can I get and still be true to what I believe, and what I hold sacrosanct about our government, about the rule of law, about the peaceful exchange of power, you know, and those kinds of things. And for whatever reason, the macrocosm has distilled itself into this very deeply personal microcosm, like our Thanksgiving table and our Christmas dinner. And how to have those things and love those family members, and accept love from those family members, without understanding, genuinely without understanding what is happening, what the fuck happened.
Yeah.
And knowing that like we will sit there quietly. I don't think that there's any person in our life who will intentionally gloat or will try to cause pain overtly.
No, I mean, there's definite love for us. I mean, I think the intentional gloat already happened, and just by one person, and I think it was out of, very differing viewpoints and frustration on the opposite side, and, wanting... It wasn't really about gloating, but more about, just definitely not seeing eye to eye. But there are a lot of moments that I have to swallow where I've never said anything, and I don't even think it's intentional hurt, but there's someone that I love very much in my family and very much loves me, and yet he can't sometimes help himself, and I don't even know if he realizes it at the moment when it's happening. But for example, I go to church with them when I go visit family, and they go to a church that obviously is very different than my church and not supportive of the LGBTQ community. But I've always went to church there, and I've went to many churches that don't support, so that's fine. But recently I went to church with them, and when I was visiting, and we're sitting up toward the front, and the pastor's preaching, and I really didn't see it coming because it kind of came out of nowhere. Didn't really seem to connect with the sermon. It wasn't like it was on homosexuality in any way. But towards the end of the sermon, there was a comment about homosexuality. And obviously, I don't think he knew. It wasn't the main pastor speaking. I don't think he knew about me at all because I was just a guest that day. I've been there before, so he might, but I don't know. But I'd like to think that it wasn't directed at all. And, I'm sitting next to a very close family member that just, lets it be said and just keeps listening to the sermon. Like, both of us just sit there and, that's it. But next to her, another family member decided when that was said to shout out. I mean, shout's a big word, but say out loud, amen, where everyone could hear. And that stung because I already know what he believes. But he is my family that invites me to his home and loves my kids and loves my wife and does holidays with us and changes holidays for us. And I stay in his house. He stayed in my house. And what was the purpose? Now, if he was saying amen to everything he agreed throughout the sermon, that'd be one thing, I guess. But there was a lot of things, the entire sermon, this was at the end, that he agreed with. And he never said amen once the whole sermon. Until something was said about homosexuality while I'm sitting right there, invited there by him. And he says amen out loud. And those are the kind of things I mean by I have to swallow. I didn't get in a fight with him about it. I didn't get up and walk out. I didn't talk to him about it. I could have, but it's like you're stunned at the moment because you're like, was that necessary? Like, why did you feel you needed to do that?
Well, and the only reason is to sting. Because we've talked about this. What is the plan? What is the plan? Like, okay, so now we know that you feel that way. It's not a surprise, by the way. We've known that forever.
Yeah.
But now,
and we know.
And so now that you've said this very public, sort of ringing, endorsement of a message that is designed, not designed, is going to land in a hurtful way, and to do what? So we get divorced.
I know.
We don't raise our family in the church, which is what we're doing. We don't continue to be a Christian household that just happens to also be gay. What does it do? It doesn't do anything. So the only purpose of it is to wound.
Yeah, and I want to ask. I mean that. If and when that conversation happens, I will ask. Like, what is your plan here? Is it that you'll say amen, and I will go,
I'm so convicted,
and I will stand up
and
walk out,
divorce my
call
wife.
Heidi and be
That's
like,
it.
sorry.
We have
tell
to
the
divorce.
kids, I'm sorry this will break their heart, but tell them I'm out. We're done. I can't do this, so I'm just going to, what has, been suggested to me before is that, oh, it's fine to be gay. It's just not fine to act on it. And I was like, isn't that convenient for you? Because you are not asked to go your whole life without love and without a partner and without marriage and without, the thing that you're not being asked for that and without ever having sex. Like, without having kids, like, isn't it convenient for you to be like, well, just be gay and keep it yourself and don't act on it? So is that the plan? Do you think if you say amen, I'm going to jump up and be like, I'm abstaining, I'm leaving my kids, breaking their hearts, leaving my wife, or I'm just going to go and be with men because I had this, enlightenment? What is the plan with that? Because I don't actually think that is what he thinks, that him saying amen is going to rip apart my whole family, the one that he loves and wants to be a part of and supports and, in the best way he knows how and welcomes them and spoils them and loves on them. Do you want him just out of your life? Like, what is the plan? And it's the same person that at one point looked at me and Heidi and said, kind of jokingly said, we want to be grandparents. Like, have you guys thought about having kids?
I forgot about that.
Yeah, because they wouldn't actually be grandparents, but because of an age gap and because of who they are in our lives, and their kids haven't had kids yet, that it would, kind of get to...
It would feel like that.
Yeah, because they get to be that way with our kids, and then if we had more kids, they would feel that way, and then they get to have a baby because our kids were already, 8 and 9 at the time. Yeah. And so there was a moment of like, have you guys talked about, like, you could have a baby? And, and like excited. And we're like, yeah, we had talked about it and we thought about it for a long time. And then we decided that this is the family that, we're supposed to have. We had a real conversation with them about it. And I'm like, so you say that comment, but then also you're saying amen that we shouldn't be homosexuals. And when we were getting engaged, I made the mistake of knowing that I had a very close family member that had always wanted to be very involved in that. And I knew that at this time they were doing holidays with us and traveling with us and staying in our home and loving on the family. So it was looking great, but I also knew that that's probably a line that they're not going to be able to handle. That's probably where the line will draw in the sand, is supporting us after, but probably not showing up to engagements and weddings. But there was a possibility, and I just didn't want them to not be able to make that decision on their own, and I would respect the decision. Because, as I said, we've come a long way. But I asked Heidi, I'm sure we're long from this happening. I don't know when it's going to happen, but because she had been married before and I hadn't, she wanted to do the first proposal. And so I said, if it comes to a time where you're going to do that, please reach out to this person. And she did, and that was so far in advance that I knew about it. And she said, thank you, just let me pray about it. So she didn't say no, she said, let me pray about it. So then as time went on, and it had been a while, and I knew we hadn't heard back from her, and I don't know when this proposal's coming or, how long it'll be, years, months, days. So I just said, whenever that time comes, maybe reach out one more time just in case they're still praying. I don't want them to have regret and miss out. And that was my bad. I should have been like, they're an adult. We put it out there. That's on them to get back or just to let it lie. So Heidi reaches out, but of course can't talk to me about it because it's a surprise, and reaches out. And instead of just graciously getting a response back like, hey, I prayed about it, and this is just not something I can be a part of, but thank you for asking. Instead, it seems what happened was it was just going to be let lie and not said anything, but because Heidi pushed at my request, because Heidi pushed while she's getting ready for this exciting thing that she wants to do, she gets back a very, what I feel, disrespectful response that Heidi then had to sit with and be sad about and hurt about and can't talk to me about. Where it was like, well, you've asked again, so now I'm going to let you know that I'm not going to be involved because I think that what you're doing is wrong and what Dean is doing is wrong. And I think you are going against God and against each other, and I will not be a part of it, and I cannot be a part of it because what you're doing against God. And how it was said was just, but then it was like, but I've loved Dean before she was born and her whole life, and I love you. And then it's these scathing words that didn't need to be said. It could have just been. And it's so funny to me because I'm like, so you feel that you're a good Christian now because you made a point. You know, be damned with what we do anyway, but you got to say your point, so you got to check it off the list, which I brought up, you know, earlier when we were, you know, planning the wedding, where someone, instead of just saying, no, I can't make it, or declining, or the RSVP had to make this, you know, point, like they've checked it off the list to say, I don't agree with what you're doing, but I still love you, you know, and had to say like some scathing words, like they feel like they've been the good Christian, when it obviously does not come as truth and love, and it's not like these people we don't know, so they don't have to make this point. And I was like, how dare you? When you know someone's planning something they're so excited about, you know what you're going to say is not going to stop Heidi in her tracks. Do you really think you wrote that and then Heidi said, oh, sorry, Dean, I talked to your family member and I saw the light and I'm not going to propose now, so we need to break up? They don't think that's going to happen. They don't think their one little response is going to make all that change. I know this family member. I know she did not think that Heidi was going to call it all off because of her statement. And yet, to feel her good Christian self, she thinks, oh, look at me, I hurt them. And I now get to say, look, God, I stood up. I said something hurtful and I did it. And now I did my part, so whatever they do. And it's just bullshit. And it was unkind and not okay. And I've never said anything about it. But I am damn pissed off about it.
But I also think, you know, it's this, again, these like small, like not small, these internal, I mean microcosm hurts and things like that. It mirrors what's happening, right? Because we won't also, like, what if we go and say you have the right to vote for a rapist? It's meant to wound. It isn't going to change their mind because we're watching this. I mean, we know this is happening, right? Yeah. I watched that map election night, and I couldn't believe it. I mean, it was red everywhere, and I thought to myself, you know, there isn't anything to say. These people know. They know who they're voting for. They have seen the same stories we've seen. They've seen, you know, the fact that, you know, this person was convicted of 34 felonies. They've watched women get, you know, financial awards because they were raped. They were sexually assaulted. He did pay off a porn star. You know, I mean, I wonder what it feels like to be Bill and Hillary Clinton. You know,
I have brought this up so many times.
To be, you know, the Democratic president who, you know, inappropriately touched someone during his time in office and was routinely castigated, and they tried to impeach, and they tried. I mean,
I'm so shocked because I was on the other side at that time, and I was, you know,
well, and they did,
and I was with my family, and I know how much. I mean, you would think to them, Bill Clinton was like the Antichrist. I mean, you would think sorry.
I would just want to say this one point. Do you know how many times I was told that the president has to be our role model?
Yes, that's what I was going to say. I heard my family over and over and over talk about how he needed to be impeached because he is supposed to be a role model for our country, for our people, who we look up to. He needs to be faithful to his wife. He needs to not cheat and not do these awful things in the Oval Office. I mean, they were like, he needs to be impeached. And then I'm like, oh my gosh. And now I'm hearing from those same type people, oh, well, Trump's just, you know, he's not a role model. I'm like, the hypocrisy is unbelievable when it's on the other side. They're just like, it doesn't matter he grabs women's vaginas. It doesn't matter that he rapes women. It doesn't matter that he pays off people so that he can try to, which is against the law, to pay off someone so that you cover something up to run. And I have literally talked to people that are like, that's not against the law. You can pay people off. People do it all the time. You cannot do it if you're running for president to do it so that it doesn't come out in an election so that you can win a presidency so that it's not shown and it's covered up. So the fact that he became president and then they uncovered that he had paid off so that it would just get put under the rug to not affect him, that is against the law. And yet we're still electing him again. And
handily. I mean, it's unreal.
And no one cares. No one cares the things he's done. And that is what I saw an article say. They said it's not that the Republicans don't know he raped women. They've all heard the comments. They've heard the stuff he said not only about women, but when Howard Stern asked about his own daughter, he said it was okay if men grabbed her pussy. They know this stuff. They do not care.
Right.
It is their party, their one issue vote, their what they want, and they do not care if he, maybe they'd rather he be not the man, but because he is, well then they're just going to follow him into the other stuff. Oh, it's so frustrating. Like, it makes no sense to me.
But I think that these are the kinds of things, right, where it's like, I genuinely would love an answer. I would love to say, for example, to my mom, okay, Mom, like, really, just really walk me through it. I really want to understand. Like, my mom is a single issue voter. She votes pro-life. And that, I think, for her, because that just rides over everything, and because she's so firm in that being the right choice and the right side of things, she really won't discuss. And I think what's disappointing is that I would like to have a nuanced discussion about her choices politically. And instead, 8 or 9 years ago, we just said, for the sake of our relationship and the years we have left, we cannot speak about politics. So we don't. It's an articulated boundary that she's broken once or twice, and it's caused big problems. I have caused big problems after she's wanted to have a discussion when we said we can't do it. And so, but genuinely, I don't think that we can understand this. I think it is hypocrisy. And I think we just have to be okay with the fact that that's what it is. And we're never going to get an answer from these people that we love that's satisfactory, because they don't want to be hypocrites and they don't want to have that be true. Just like I don't want things about what I think and believe to show up on the wrong side of things. And so it's uncomfortable, and I don't think we're going to get these answers. And so I think there has to be some other work we can do then in those rooms. And I don't know what it is. And I'm a bit desperate for it, because it's very unsettling and it's very hurtful. And I think we often leave these conversations and these moments in church and these phone calls and these text messages hurting and feeling bereft. And
well, and I think that maybe sometimes I feel, I'm trying to think if it's the word ashamed or frustrated with myself for being such an opinionated, outgoing person and yet swallowing stuff that I probably shouldn't have swallowed. I should have probably, when I came out, not long after coming out and having heart-to-hearts and doing it very respectfully and it going better than expected with my family. We had a Christmas together, and we had this amazing, one of my aunts said, this is a tradition I've done that I've never shared with you, but I've done with other family members on the other side, and I kind of wanted to try it, where we all write letters to each other. Because you don't always say the things you want to say to people. You just have fun holidays and tease around and love each other, but not the, heartfelt things sometimes. You don't take that time. People don't write letters anymore. So she says, I want everyone to write a letter to each person, and then we exchange them. And, you don't read them out loud. You just take them, and then you have these special letters. And it was a really amazing thing, and I loved it. Me and my aunt, she and I, we call her aunt our whole life because she was such a close, dear friend to my mom, and still had holidays with us years after my mom passed, and is just such an amazing woman. And we had really, because I was decades under my siblings born, hadn't had the kind of relationship that my siblings had had with her. And so we had never really connected in this way. And I still cherish the letters I got from her and wrote to her, and just getting to express in ways that I looked up to her and things that I didn't know she felt towards me. And it was this really great bonding thing with all the family members. But I do remember the same family member that I love that's kind of had these moments in church and these different moments with me, writing me this great, beautiful letter. And then at the end, telling me that he was praying for my future husband. And I walked into my niece and I said, wait, does he not know? And she goes, oh, he knows. We all know. What do you mean? You came out. Like, yes, he knows. And I'm like, but she goes, oh, he knows. And just this, it just tainted the whole letter for me. Because it's this great, I had wrote him this amazing emotional letter, and here I get this great letter from him. And then it ends with that. And instead of me saying something, I just didn't. He came and hugged me, and I just acted as if it was this great moment to have these letters. And maybe that's the problem, is because since that moment, there has continued to be that moment with that same person, because I never say anything. I always swallow it. And I don't want to do it disrespectfully, and I don't want to cause a big fight, and I don't want to, but there probably needs to be a time where it needs to be, this is who I am, and you either accept it or you don't. You're saying you accept it in as much as you can, and you know, with me knowing how you feel, still loving me and wanting to be a part of my family and wanting to, but then there's constant little zingers. Like, you constantly have to like make sure I know how you feel. And supposedly what I'm told is you still love me and want me in your life. So you need to make a decision. And I think that conversation has to happen, because otherwise it's never going to stop. So.
Well, but at the same time, right? I know, like, this is what I mean, like, how to stay true to yourself and not. I mean, you know, I have had, you know, no relationship with my brother for since my first marriage, and since before my first marriage. And so at what cost, right? And so it's either this deep, wounding, emotional cost that we bear alone, or it is this frank, boundary-driven discussion that we initiate that could carry with it the potential consequence of no relationship. So again, it's I really want to know, what the fuck do we do? Yeah. Because damned if we do and damned if we don't. So when we sat down to do this episode, Dean's like, let's try to give some hope.
I know. Which I don't know that we did very well on.
But I think in some ways, right, there's always hope in watching somebody else ask these questions, because I don't know that we get to know. I don't know that we get to have a blueprint, right? I think what we are asked to do is harder than that. And I think we are asked to, well, so, you know, one of the things that our church has been very vocal about in sermons and in conversations is the idea that there is the power that is, okay, so the government, the church, the founding church, whatever the power is, right? Whatever system we find ourselves a part of or reacting to is there, and it is established. So there is going to be a Republican president come the 2025, and that is the powers that be, right? So that is a thing, and that is true and clear. And then there is our own personal authority, right? Authority that we have from God, authority that we have because we're human, authority that we have because we claim it. And in the sermon yesterday, the pastor said, back in the day when they said, if someone hits you on the right side, turn to them the left side. And you know, we grew up in the church.
Turn the other cheek.
Turn the other cheek, right? So it's this idea of like, just keep taking it.
Yeah, like if they hit you on one side, then they'll hit you on the other. Which obviously growing up is very confusing, but you're like, well, God said it.
Right.
So turn the other cheek. Just let him keep hitting you.
It's been traditionally used to continue subjugation, obviously, right? So this idea that like, in order to be a follower of Christ, you must humble yourself in the face of true injustice or true unkindness or true disparity, right? So you just have to just fucking swallow it. And he said, actually, if you read that in the context, the cultural context of the time was that if you were someone who could strike someone else, that the only way to convey that with power befitting your station, so the power that communicated who you were in the world, you would hit them with the back of your hand. So when he said turn the other cheek, what he was saying was turn to them the cheek that requires them to recognize you as an equal and hit you with an open hand.
Because if you hit with an open hand in that cultural time, you're saying it's equal.
Yeah,
back
you
of
are
the
hitting.
hand
You are
is
hitting
power over you.
Right. And so, you know, the thing that, and there's other examples. You ask for your shirt, give them your tunic. It's this idea that like, oh, you're not doing something to me. It's my authority that's allowing me to offer you more than you've asked for, right? This concept.
And the walk a mile, offer to walk two.
Right. And so,
Well,
that one was, you know, a Roman citizen could not be forced to carry or walk a mile with a centurion, but a slave or a subjugated person or, you know, a person who is not a citizen they could be ordered to do that. And so in saying, okay, I will walk too, you're saying, I am choosing to do this.
Like you're not
I have
forcing
my
me. You don't have
authority.
power over me. I'm saying, I'll walk two with you because you can't force me. Yeah.
But overwhelmingly, the theme then becomes, do these startling, unexpected things that cause someone to view you slightly differently. And it's that question that I want to answer through my behavior and my actions over the course of, you know, the next 4 years, but, you know, over the course of the next 3 weeks, right? How do I show love? How do I show compassion? How do I maintain my sense of who I am and still hold these cherished people in a place, you know, because I think it would be too easy to wound back. I think it would be too much fun to ask for a reckoning of some kind, to say, okay, here we sit, and they likely fear this situation as well, right? That none of us, we all are working so hard to maintain these loving family relationships, and it's time, I think, to realize that if I go to them and I say, oh, okay, so what do you think about having a rapist in the White House? I'm only doing that to wound. It makes me feel better. It makes me feel heard a little bit. It rubs out a little bit of the ache that I have that this could possibly happen. But it doesn't help or change them or show them that I've somehow reclaimed my own authority in this, right? So what does? I don't know. I'm not sure, right? But I do know that even in offering the other cheek, even though I know that I am reclaiming my sense of equality, it still hurts being slapped with an open hand or a backhand or any of those things. And I think that the work is in, you know, holding back some of the pain that I feel and sparing those relationships that pain. I don't think that we get an answer from these people that will heal us. I don't think they can give it to us. I think we have to find our own peace. And I think it is in showing them that peace and in showing them that we aren't going to have a January 6th. We're not going to be the people that sit at the table and wound. We're not going to be the scared animals that they've chased into a corner. We're going to stand with our arms open and with our hearts open. And we're going to do the best we can to love them. Because I think that that's where it starts. I think that that's what we're asked to do, is to love when we are hurt and to to teach our kids that we might think differently, but we're family, and to teach those around us that are asking, what can we do? We can love. And it sucks because I'm hurting, and so I want to hurt. And I don't think we're allowed to.
Well, you're allowed to hurt, but that doesn't mean...
We're not allowed to wound.
Yeah, hurt back. Yeah, we have exciting moment for our family coming up. Our 3 kids have asked to be baptized, and they're being baptized in our church that supports our family overwhelmingly. They not cancel services, but they hold church services at Pride in support of LGBTQ, and it's just, our kids are getting to grow up in a different time in church with us, and they have asked to be baptized, and we're very excited about that. And Heidi's never been baptized, so she's getting baptized. And the family that we love is all coming, a lot of them are coming to support and watch, and we're very grateful and thankful and excited about that. But it'll be the first time that they come with us to our church, and as I said, it's always us going with them to their church. And so there's been a lot of I've been very nervous about that. But I'm just grateful that we're in a place that I can have a church that supports me, and I can have, that will baptize my kids and still support my family and let us be Christians and gay. I'm excited that I have a family that knows they're coming to a church that's not their type, and that still wants to come and support because they're so excited for my kids and Heidi and want to support these milestones. And of course, it will be different when they come to our church, because when things are said that they don't agree with, I won't be saying amen out loud. I will just sit there and let them think their thoughts and process, and even if I know they don't agree, just like I'm quiet when I'm at their church when things are said they don't agree, so it'll just be handled differently in the way that I would like them to handle it. And I'm just choosing to be grateful for all the growth, and my family and I and Heidi's family and her have come such a long way, and I'm just choosing to be, we're all trying in different ways, and it's it's a slow journey, but it's moving in the right direction, and I'm so grateful for it, and so I just want to celebrate that.
Yes. And I think that there is power in that. I think one of the things that was said again at our church yesterday was this idea that that Dr. King said, right? That the arc is long, but it bends towards justice, and that each of these little steps, each of these baby steps, right, that we're experiencing in our family. But the truth is, the world, the American collective community is going to hurt, but because of some of the policies that will be enacted. It's just a given. And it isn't that they wouldn't have hurt if there was a different outcome to the election, right? Everybody gets hurt, right? There's pain, and broad sweeping changes of any kind of policy carry with it pain and discomfort, and change is hard. So maybe it's in learning these lessons in the microcosm, in the family, the holiday dinners, and in the absorbing of that pain, right? Accepting that it is out of fear or out of whatever it is, but loving back, loving in return, right? It's not weakness. It's not being who we are. In fact, it's an act of startling, revolution, right? It is turning the other cheek. It is handing the tunic over with the shirt. It is walking 2 miles and not one, because it isn't what's expected. And if we can learn to love genuinely, heartfelt, return to them the dignity we wish and hope they could give to us, I think we will make changes. I think we will offer healing in places that will need it. And I think that as we watch, what happens if they do
talk about the case in the Supreme Court.
Which?
The one that why California and these 3 states are passing these marriage laws, and what is coming and what's happening with that.
So it's a seminal case on speech, actually, and I don't remember the name of it, or I wasn't prepared to do this, so it won't be an academic discussion, but essentially one of the questions that the court was wrestling with at the time was, how do you identify pornography? Because, of course, that's not protected speech, right? So just like hate speech has been identified and isn't protected, so they were trying to identify pornography so that they could make rules about it, right? So this is what it is and it is not allowed idea, right? So in order to say what is not allowed, you have to identify it somehow or define it. And the Supreme Court at the time was content to leave their opinions stating that porn is something that you will know it when you see it. The idea that, like, we can't define it, but you will know it when you see it, right? And so one of the things that is very troubling for, gay and lesbian people is this concept that Project 2025 does define pornography, and from what I can understand, it includes gay and lesbian lifestyle, I don't know, like choices, right? So if you are homosexual, that is pornographic, right? That so it is defining unprotected speech that can be penalized, right? And
putting us under that umbrella.
Yeah. And so there's a lot of fear for not only for those of us that watch constitutional jurisprudence, because we used to take a lot of comfort in the idea that precedent mattered tremendously, right? So this idea that law is something that happens over time, slowly, with additional words added on as cases come up through the Supreme Court, right? So constitutional jurisprudence is man-made law that happens over the course of many cases sometimes, right? So we've put a lot of our trust in precedents, stare decisis. I'm probably saying that wrong, but the concept that if it is law, then there has to be something more than just we don't like it, so we're changing it, right? So that is a thing that we have taken a lot of comfort in, those of us that study constitutional jurisprudence. Well, after what happened with Roe, we all know that that's not the same thing that it used to be, right? So that they don't have to say anything other than, well, we got it wrong, so now we're changing it. So so I think that it is very important to be aware and watch, right, what they're going to do with those kinds of cases, right? With the constitutional jurisprudence is something to be watching pretty carefully, I think, in light of the fact that like this is a Supreme Court who does not hold with precedents. They will overturn it as they see fit. And as the highest court in our system, once they do, they largely go unchecked unless the legislature can, make another law, right? That's the three-party system. But we're now watching, a very conservative court, and I think we're also dealing with a Republican majority in the legislation and a Republican president. So I think certain rights that we have considered stable and safe, like Loving v. Virginia, Obergefell, cases where we've seen the, social fabric of our country become more protective rather than more restrictive. I think those are all ripe for a similar fate as Roe, right? And however you feel about abortion, I still think it's worth watching because we've been shown that constitutional jurisprudence does not have the same weight of precedence that we thought that it did, and that the social structure that we have sort of carved out and protected over decades of constitutional jurisprudence, it's all open, right? But particularly when you look at a very vague case, like the speech case I'm talking about, where they didn't define pornography as anything other than something we would know when we saw it. Well, that is, they don't even have to overturn precedent. They can use it. So, I think that it is important that we understand that the work that we have to do, right, the love that we have to show, I think is in helping to protect those people who cannot protect themselves. And I think that, if you study history and what happened in the Weimar Republic before fascism took over in the form of the Nazi Party, in Germany, there were a lot of these similar sort of stirrings where it was these laws that weren't quite understandable to everybody, or like, wait, is this really happening? Well, they are, in fact, the reason why, the Holocaust happened under the rule of law, right? Like, no one that did anything in Nazi Germany broke any laws when all those people died. They were following the law. It was under color of the law that fascism created the horrors that we know today as the Holocaust, right? And keep in mind, it wasn't just Jewish people that were murdered under color of the law, right? It was transgender people and gay people and disabled people and any other, quote, undesirable that had the misfortune of living under the law that was enacted, So these are the things I think that we have to, like, we can't allow, right? Like, we have to ask some of these hard questions. But I think those hard questions are questions that we ask in our larger community and, in the world. And I think that we are also called to love the people who, they're not actively behind it, right? So I don't know. I mean, I think we owe it to our country to pay close attention, and I think we owe it to ourselves and our families to love as hard as we can love while it's happening.
Yeah. I think that's a good place to end with that. So we love you. We're all in this together. You're not alone. And we love to hear from you. And this conversation just keeps continuing. Bye, guys.